All right, questions. My wife does not like going to the movie theaters. Anyone else like her? Anyone else like that? Like, who does not like to go to the movie theaters? She doesn't like to go. She just, I don't know, it's uncomfortable. I don't know, it's just the people. The $13 a ticket. Now they're awesome because now you got these chairs that you're just pretty much laying down. I mean, that's pretty cool and pretty like, I don't know what's happening in front of me because I can't see. So, I don't know. And so it's interesting. But yeah, I love it. I love watching movies. And so, guys, I want to welcome you guys to our first week of our summer series, right? This is our first Sunday of the summer. It's already here, I know, right? Full summer vacations in full swing. Teenagers are sleeping in like nobody's business, right? And so it's pretty nice. It's awesome. Good times, good times. But besides that, guys, what we wanted to do, we are starting something this summer, right? Right now, this time. It's a new series. And so we like to, every once in a while, focus, whether it be for a month, 4 weeks, 6 weeks, even 3. We focus on one idea, and we unpack that over the following weeks. And so today we're going to do that using, obviously, this sermon series called God on Film. And so we are picking, we've chosen 4 different movies that some of the biggest blockbusters that are going to hit 2017. Some of them already have come out. And we're going to use them and look at something, a truth inside of those movies that some of us will watch. There's no requirements. You don't have to pre-watch a movie to show it, to get anything out of this. But the idea is that we want to look at these movies in one way so that we can experience God in a powerful way. Okay? So today we're going to do Beauty and the Beast. Next week we're going to talk about the Fate of the Furious. If any Fast and the Furious fans out here, I finally caught up with all 39 of those movies. You know, just really, it's like every other week they got a new one out. So, but those are, I caught up with those, except for the 8th one. I haven't watched the new one. On Father's Day, we're going to do Guardians of the Galaxy, the Volume 2. That's the one we're going to do on Father's Day in a couple weeks from now. And then the last last Sunday of this month, we're going to do Wonder Woman. All right, so there we go. So no war on women in this place. Okay, right, there we go. So we're just giving everybody a shot, But yeah, Wonder Woman's coming out. That was going to be, I think it just came out this weekend. I heard it was pretty good. I'm not sure. I haven't seen it yet. So yeah, it'll come out. Yeah, we'll talk about that one last Sunday. But today we're going to talk about Beauty and the Beast, and the title for today's sermon is this. It is the beauty that can change any beast. Okay? So that's the title. So one thing that I want us to see from today, the beauty that can change any beast. And so for those of you, raise your hand if you've seen the classic Beauty and the Beast. Raise your hand if you've seen the cartoon version. All right, raise your hand if you've seen the live action one. All right, I've heard they're both really good. I haven't seen the live action one yet. I'm looking forward to. You know, the Jungle Book was pretty cool, so I heard this one was great. Now, I know the Beauty and the Beast, though, they got a lot of publicity out in the news, right? A lot of different stuff, but we are not, I mean, we can make a whole deal on that, but we're not going to do, okay? Not because I'm afraid of talking about anything. It's just, hey, we got to focus, do one thing at a time. And so today, there is something about the overall story of Beauty and the Beast that I believe it's not only, it's real life, we can apply it in real life, but there's actual, it's biblical. It's actually, there's truths in the Bible that reflect that same story. Now, let me just help you out. Those of you who've seen it, let me just kind of highlight certain parts of it. If you haven't seen the movie yet, where have you been? Okay, like literally like 30 years from now, or whatever, since the first one. So whatever, I'm just going to ruin it for you now. I'm apologizing. So just say, I forgive you, okay? Say, forgive me for spoiling the movie now. Okay, thank you. There we go. All right, so what we're going to do, guys, is see, so for Beauty and the Beast, you know, obviously, where does it start? We have the Beast, right? He, at first, wasn't a beast. He was, right, just a prince. But there was an interaction with some poor old lady, right, a beggar, asking for help, and he rejects her. Because, not that he couldn't, just didn't want to. Cold-hearted and just really mean, really selfish. And so it turns out that the lady was a sorceress, right? Of course, because that's what happens. And as strangers, you never know. And so she turns him into a beast, right? Puts a curse on him and gives him this crazy rose. And that he has to change, right? The whole point of it is what? The rose is like a clock. It's like a ticking time bomb, right? He has to change, and the only way he can change is to fall in love with someone, to have that person fall in love with him. Am I right so far? And he has to do it when? Before the final rose petal falls. If the final rose petal falls and time is up, and he has not changed, what happens? He is permanently, right? For the rest of his life, he's going to remain a beast, right? And so that's that aspect. Obviously, he struggles a little bit because how is he going to get someone to fall in love with him when he looks like a monster, right? Everyone's going to run away from him. So that's a pretty big challenge right then and there. How am I going to get how am I going to get somebody to fall in love with me when I look like this? And not just that, he doesn't know how to love someone, right? That's kind of the whole point of it. He's very cold and selfish and mean. The external beast that he was really nothing but a revelation of who he was on the inside, right? He was a good-looking prince on the outside, but the sorceress revealed, no, that's not who you really are. This and that curse that she put on him really revealed his true nature. His nature was a beastly one. It was not a pretty one, okay? It was ugly. And so obviously the beauty is who? Belle. All right, Belle is the beauty of the story. Belle, like the beast, who the beast wants to change, understand he needs to change before time is up. He doesn't want to remain a beast. Belle, very similarly, wants things to be different. She's looking for change, right? She's not the typical girl next door, right? She's not falling in love with the one that everyone's falling in love with, right? Who is he? Gaston, right? And so she doesn't care about him, and she's always looking for something new, right? To try to seek a better life. And so she's always looking for something to change and for things to be different. And so some of us, the story, try to wrap this up as quickly as possible. She finds herself imprisoned, right? They're all like nasty to each other. Eventually, they start warming up to each other. She starts warming up to him. A lot more happens. And then right at the very end, here's the spoiler part. Say, you forgive me. Okay. The beast transforms back into a prince. Okay, if you didn't know that. All right, wow, just shocking right then and there. The beast turns back into a prince because right at the moment, right, he was stabbed by Gaston. I haven't seen the new movie yet, so I don't know if they changed it. In the cartoon, he's dying, right? And he's there, declares with his final breath his love for Belle. And Belle, which is amazing, doesn't see the beast anymore on the outside. She sees who he is on the inside, okay? She sees who he is. She doesn't look at the exterior. She looks at the interior. She looks at the heart, okay? That's what happens. So they both declare their love to each other. Fireworks happen, and right, the beast turns back into the prince, and miraculously that wound healed, okay? I mean, he was dying a minute ago, and now he's all better. So I don't know, at some point that happened, that closed up. And so, yeah, and so he's all better, and then it all, happily ever after. But man, the beast is kind of messed up because if you go to like Disney and all this stuff, he got better. But when you go to see him at Disney, he's still the beast. I was like, man, that's kind of messed up, bro. I was like, what happened? I thought, you were better, but no, we always remember him as that beast monster, whatever, it's okay. Now, that's the whole story, right? Now, there's one crazy theme in that story that I wanted to highlight today. And it's the power of love to change someone, right? That's kind of what the story is. The story is one big story about the power of love to change an individual. And guys, you know that to be true, right? You guys know that, when you love, let's say something, if you love something too much, it could help. It could help you. It could hurt you. Okay? There's a lot of people right now on rehab because they love something way too much. Okay? And it didn't help them any better. But love can move you, can shape you, changes you for the good, or sometimes not so good. For some of us, you might have that relationship that, for some of us, I know with me as having kids, that changed me, that love for them and that love back changed me to want to be better, right? Maybe change some ways. If I see them copying bad habits, I realize I need to change because, right, I don't want them to repeat mistakes or whatever. And so, right, that love motivates me to change. Obviously, if you're in a relationship, have you ever been in one that, you physically want to change because maybe your advances are not being noticed? Right? I'm like, okay, I got to change things up because she's not noticing me right now. And so, I don't know, we do things, right? We change for people. We change tactics, different things like that. I love, to be honest, when it comes to even me and my wife, she's made me better. Like our relationship, which is kind of crazy. I am very introverted. I can be socially awkward, okay? Which is so being a pastor is the ideal job for someone who doesn't like to stand in front of people in social circumstances. Okay? You catch the irony there. And so, but she is very different. She is the complete opposite. Just way out there, super social. And so me being around her has helped me a whole lot. We identify with this movie a lot. In our relationship, she's the beauty, I'm the beast. And so that's just kind of how it is. I had to use that joke. I'm sorry, I had to. But with that, guys, that's the positive. But then there's the negative, right? How many have you, I'm pretty sure some of us might have this experience, or someone that fell in love with an individual and that person changed. It changed them, right? They were no longer who they were. Does anybody understand? You guys get me, right? They get into that wrong relationship and they change on the inside. They're not the same person. They're not the same individual. And so, guys, love is powerful. Love can shape and move and do a lot. And so, but in both cases, when it comes to Beauty and the Beast, especially the Beast, I want you to notice this. They both realize that they need to change, right? Something needs to change because how things are not the way they should be. And they're seeking whatever means to be able to accomplish that. And love is the only thing. Do you guys know that theme is biblical? Do you guys know that's in the Bible? You know, we as Christians, we believe that this world has fallen into a state that it is not the way it should be. It's not the way it's supposed to be. And the one thing and the only thing that God has shown us that can change things is His love. His love for us. Not our love for Him, but His love for us in particular is the one thing that could change and help us to take us from where we are to where we need to be. To help us to see that true transformation, that change, to be better, whatever it is, to be a better parent or, a neighbor, spouse, just be a better follower of Jesus. It's the love of God that changes us. Because just like Belle, remember I told you that Belle at one point, she didn't see the outside. What does she see? She sees the inside. And you guys know that in the Bible, in the first or second book of Samuel, God says that, in the first book of Samuel, He says that man looks at the outside, but me, I'm God. I'm different. I look at the heart. I look at the inside. And God's love for us, despite the ugliness of our sin, okay, He sees us for who we could be if we surrendered to that love. Despite the fact that we may do things that He hates, God still loves us. That's what makes His love so beautiful. Now, what we're going to do today, because obviously the story of Beauty and the Beast is the story of the power of love and of transformation. And there's one story in particular in the entire Bible that it's very hard to compete and to compare and saying, can we find a better story of transformation and change by the power of God's love than this story right here? So guys, what we're going to do is we're not really going to look at, normally when I, show you a Bible verse, right, we might go through a chapter, might go through a couple of verses. We're not going to do that today. We're just going to look at one person as a whole. Now, this one person, the reason why we're going to talk about this one person, in particular, we're going to talk about one event in this person's life. And this one event, just a little, for those of you who like fun facts, this event actually takes up more space in the New Testament than anything else except one thing. Jesus' death, burial, and resurrection. Like when you read the Gospels, it slows down when we get to the point where Jesus dies and on the cross and is resurrected. Because that's a huge, the story slows down because it's so important. They don't want to miss a thing. Well, you guys know that the next time that happens in the New Testament, the next time is this one individual, this one story, this one event slows down and takes up more space than everything else in the New Testament except Jesus' death, burial, and resurrection. Because this event was so powerful. It was so monumental. It was a life-changing moment for one person, but it also changed the course of history. One event. And it was from this guy named Paul. So let me play you a little video, just to kind of give you a quick recap on some things.
People called me Saul once, a Hebrew of Hebrews, faultless in the eyes of the law. But I watched the rebellion grow like a fire explode. Claims of a Messiah and the resurrection, the Son of God they declared, and for that, I hunted them. My will was bent on destruction, but on the road to ruin, my world was torn apart. A voice called my name, and the scales fell from my eyes. The fire that I sought to extinguish was now consuming and refining me. People called me Saul once, but that was another life, for I am a new creation. It is no longer I who live, but Christ who lives in me. And neither death nor life, not even the powers of hell, will separate me from the love of God that is in Christ Jesus.
Okay. Some of you might be familiar with the Apostle Paul. Some of you might not. And so he is the most important, when we look at Paul today, we consider him to be one of the greatest apostles out of the original 12 that God had called. And there was something unique about him. There was something different than him compared to the others. Because all of the other apostles had one thing in common. They all got to live with Jesus. They sat at his feet when he taught. They physically saw the miracles. They were there. Many of them were there when Jesus was arrested. They weren't there when he was crucified, but they all saw. Some of them were able to see the empty tomb. Others saw the risen Jesus appear to them, talk to them, communicate to them. So there was the other 11, all had one thing in common. They were all there from the beginning. Paul was different. Paul wasn't there. We have no evidence that Paul was sitting in any of Jesus's talks. He didn't see a miracle. Though what we do know is that Paul, if you notice, his first name, his real name was Saul. And Saul did not like what was happening because he lived during a time where Jesus had died and resurrected and everything, and he was alive during that time. And he was a part of a group that vehemently disagreed with everything Jesus stood for, and especially what the early believers and what the Christians did with what Jesus had called them to do. And you saw it there. Paul was a beast in his own right, let me just tell you. Paul was a beast. Intellectual monster. Amazing. And a beast in a good way. Guy was just on another level. Do you guys know that I think it's kind of funny, but whatever. You might think my, humor is not funny, but whatever. So in the Bible, there's a letter where Peter is writing to, in one of the books in the Bible, Peter is writing to other Christians and telling them, hey, yeah, pretty much paraphrasing, everything that Paul has written and all those other letters he said before, yeah, some of those, good luck. That's Peter. Peter's pretty much saying, sometimes Paul can get on another level intellectually that Peter's like, dude, you lost me. So, if you've ever read the Bible or read any of Peter's letters and you kind of maybe felt a little, hey, good company, okay? Peter, him too. Sometimes he has struggled a little bit to try to grasp something. But beyond that, guys, see, Paul was a beast, in his own mind. Amazing mind, a beautiful mind. He was one of the best, brightest scholars of his time. He was really young, but he was like one of those, up-and-comers that was, everybody was expecting big things from Paul. In this case, Saul. But the one thing that also revealed a little of Saul's character was he was a beast when it came to putting down this new movement called Christianity and the believers of the way. He was tenacious, vicious in hunting these Christians down. And it was what you saw in a little video was he mentions this moment, which is the moment that I was telling you that literally changed one man's life and changed the course of history. This one event. And it was Paul's conversion and his surrender to Jesus when Saul became Paul and forever was never the same again. And see, what happened was Paul was on his way to arrest other Christians in the city called Damascus. And while on that road, Jesus shows up. He interrupts him, stands there, and this light shines so bright, knocks him off his horse. All the other Roman soldiers that are there with him, whoever's with him on this mission to arrest these Christians, they don't see the light, but they hear a sound like a roar, like a rumbling thunder. And Paul hears it differently. He hears the voice of Jesus. If you can imagine, some of us, we know the feeling of when you get busted, right? Busted by a teacher, busted by your parents, right? Busted by a friend, girlfriend, whatever. We know that feels, a lot of us know that feeling of getting busted. Here he is, in all of his heart, he believes wholeheartedly these Christians are wrong. These Christians are liars. These Christians are perverting the truth of God. And because out of Paul's love for God, he has this vicious hate towards these Christians because he believes it's the worst thing ever. And so he is out there, and here he is. Here's the risen Jesus interrupting him. And he says, yeah, the Jesus, those you are persecuting, yeah, I'm the Jesus you are persecuting. It's me. I'm real. This is for real. And at that moment, that's when everything that Paul knew and he thought to believe to be true, is forever changed. Now here's something, guys. Why do we want to talk about Paul today? Because here's the thing, guys. Paul is very important. If you're a believer in Jesus Christ, I want you to understand how insanely important Paul and this story is. Because see, if Jesus can transform this life, he can transform any life. Because it's not like he was just somebody who was just whatever. Somebody said something good. Like, that's a good idea. I think I might believe in Jesus. No, this guy, you couldn't find anyone who disagreed with the message of Jesus more than him. Okay, I mean, to the point that it's one thing if you're going to disagree. It's another where he's trying to put you in jail. I mean, this guy was crazy about this. And so you can find a more bigger critic, a more bigger persecutor of this message than Paul. And God turned his life around in one moment. And if he can turn Paul's life around so drastically, that's good news for us. That's why this story of Paul meeting Jesus on that road, it's so long and detailed. Because if God can do it with him, say this with me, he can do it in me. Said if God can change Paul, he can change me. Because it was that drastic. Now, here's one thing I want you to understand about Paul, okay? He's a real person who wrote real letters and had a real encounter with Jesus. Why am I saying that? Because here's the thing, guys. When it comes to, I'm pretty sure some of you, if you're a believer, you've had some run-ins with individuals like this. If you're here and this is your first time here, it's maybe your first time trying to check out things about Jesus and the Bible and religion, you might have some questions, might have some things that you may disagree with. And I'm pretty sure we've all interacted with this. But, there's people who still, even today, for the longest time, they were debating on if this man named Jesus ever lived. For a while, forever, everyone was like, oh, he was just made up. He never was alive. He never was born. None of that stuff. Well, eventually, there's just too much evidence to kind of prove and say, okay, even secular scholars will say, all right, there was a guy named Jesus. Jesus was real. He was a historical figure. We'll give you that. All right? But, the one thing that they debate on the most, if he resurrected from the dead or not. Right? Because that would mean he was either a good teacher, a good man, which most people accept. But then the other thing was what? That he was the risen God, that he was the Savior. So there's debates on if Jesus ever resurrected or not. There's debates on that. But you guys know who doesn't debate, or what even secular scholars don't debate on? If Paul ever lived. Paul, even secular scholars will agree and say, yeah, there was a man named Paul. He did live, and he did travel the known Roman Empire, spreading the gospel, spreading the good news of Jesus Christ. Even non-Christians will tell you that. They'll give it to you because there's just too much evidence to prove to say, yeah, he was a real person, and he did do and go to all of these places, okay? And so he actually traveled, which is amazing timing. Look how awesome God is. This might sound familiar if you know history. If it's been forever since you were in high school, you might not have a clue. But have you ever heard of the Pax Romana? That was a time during the Roman history. The Pax Romana was a time in Roman history where there was an amazing amount of peace. I mean, there was no wars, no issues with people. And guess when Paul traveled the known world to spread the gospel? During the Pax Romana. Where back then, it was already dangerous to travel anywhere, okay? It's not like today where it was a lot more dangerous to travel anywhere, whether on the road or on boat and stuff. But it was the best possible time ever to traverse the entire Roman Empire. And he did it during the Pax Romana. He is doing this during a time of peace to bring the peace and to share the peace of Jesus. It's pretty cool. But anyways, guys, no scholars will debate that no one will debate that Paul actually lived. He was a real person. But you guys know the other thing that I said second. Paul wrote real letters. Okay? Another thing, if you got a Bible, guess what? Shocking, most people don't agree and don't believe in what's in there. A lot of people don't. One of the biggest reasons why is that for years now, people have been using this one claim. It has been so long since the Bible has been originally written. It has, translated in multiple different languages, and over 2,000, 3,000 years, things have had to have changed. Things are not the same. You can't trust what's in the Bible, okay? Because it's changed. It's like a really bad game of telephone. You ever played telephone when you were a kid? Right? You start on one end, you say something. By the time you get to the end, some jerk in the middle changed it all up, And so now it's all like weird nonsense stuff. And so that's what people believe, that you can't trust what's in the Bible because it's been so long. Something had to have changed. And with all the translations and going from this to that, something had to have changed. Well, unfortunately for those people who hold that claim, every year archaeology continues to prove and to reinforce what's in the Bible. I don't know if you know that. Every year we're seeing, wow, here's this site that we've never seen before. And it discusses a city or a region that was in the Bible. And when you look at the timeline and the all this geological stuff I have no clue about, they would say, yeah, it would have been, this place would have been alive or functioning during the time that it was written in the Bible. We find different artifacts of names that were in the Bible that were nowhere else, but then we find a random stone and we find all these things. So every year, every single year, we are seeing more and more proof, archaeological proof, not necessarily from Christians, even from seculars, that are showing us that the Bible is 99% accurate. Guys, I want you to understand something about the Bible. It's unique to everything else because it was written over 1,400 years. It's not like one dude just sat down one afternoon and just busted this thing out, okay? It's different. This was the Bible is one book, but it's a collection of multiple books. If you don't understand what the Bible is, it's a collection of multiple books. And in those, the very first one, which some is considered to be the book of Job, something that's the first book ever written in timeline, the book of Job. And then the book of Revelation's assuming to be one of the final ones ever written. That spans 1,400 years, multiple different authors, both rich and poor, from different continents of the world. And yet, throughout that entire timeline, at one point a couple hundred years ago, we started looking at all these things. We started realizing, okay, certain Christians decided on saying, okay, we're going to keep this thing called the canon, okay, meaning we're going to just, out of all of the things that we have, that we've seen, that people have read and quoted, we believe that this is the most sincere and the most accurate and the most true to what God originally said. And every year we keep on finding little fragments of something that was written by Jeremiah and Isaiah almost 3,000 years ago. And guess what the fragment says? The same thing that we have today. And so we can prove even scientifically that what is in the Bible is written. So guess where the problem lies? It's not, is what's in the Bible true? Do you believe it to be true? Because what's in it is what is originally written. So it's up to us then to decide, do you believe it to be true or not? Now, that's the Old Testament. The New Testament, guys, even more. And see, we have, again, the Bible is a collection. We have the Old Testament, which is everything written before Jesus. New Testament, everything written after Jesus. And you know who wrote the majority of the New Testament? This guy named Paul. This guy named Paul wrote the majority of it, which was really a lot of letters that he would write to a Christian church and he would write to another church. That's why it has all those weird names like Corinthians and Ephesians and Galatians, all those weird stuff. He even wrote some to individuals like Timothy and Titus and Jude, individuals like that. And so all of those letters eventually were collected together and they were brought together, and that's what we have as our book, as what we call the Bible. But you guys know that in the New Testament, we have so much evidence that shows us that Paul, there's no debate that what Paul wrote and what's said that Paul wrote it, and what is in there right now, it's true. It's meaning that it's what he originally wrote. All right, so there's no, even secular scholars will not disagree with that. It's like, yeah, it's what it is. It's what it is. And what's amazing is that, you know, Paul's first letter was this one book called the 1 Corinthians. That's assumed the first letter that Paul ever wrote. That we have in the New Testament, 1 Corinthians. It was written around 52 AD. Now, I'm kind of throwing some stuff out just to hold on because there's a reason why. See, 52 AD is when 1 Corinthians was written, right? Jesus supposedly died, resurrected, you know, in the time frame, we don't know the exact year, but we believe that it happened anywhere from 30 AD to 33 AD. So do quick math, 52 minus 32, you know, roughly 20 years, right? So the first letter, one of the first written documents that we have in the New Testament was written within 20 years of the original events happening. Guys, I want to tell you, that's massive. Because most written things, you guys know that most of the things that we teach in like ancient history, like even the books that we read about, some of Caesar's stuff, some of the things about the Roman Empire, even, Shakespeare. Some of Shakespeare's stuff, the copies that we have, there's a lot of we don't have a lot of the original documents that a lot of these people have written, but we have copies of copies. And a lot of these copies sometimes are maybe 100, 200, 300 years from when it originally happened. So we have a lot of ancient documents that some of them are anywhere from 300, 800, 1,000 years, and we know that it was written around this time, and it was speaking of a time that was earlier. Well, guys, with the Bible, we have archaeological evidence that proves that what's written in the New Testament is 20 years from the dates. And some of the original copies that we have are within sometimes 5 years of when the letter was supposedly written. Guys, you can't find that anywhere. And yet we still say, nah, but you still can't trust it. You still can't believe. Look, if you throw out the Bible, despite the overwhelming evidence of what's in there, you literally have to throw out everything that we've been teaching kids since prior 1500, okay? Because it's just that overwhelming, that much of what we have. So if you're a Christian here, I want you to feel really good about the Bible, okay? I want you to feel really good about what you have there is true, regardless of anybody would say, because it is. Just because we can prove it, okay? And Paul wrote a lot of these letters. Now, no one debates Paul ever lived. No one debates Paul wrote these letters. No one debates the words that were in there. But now the disagreement comes in one place. Because guess what Paul, if you read all of Paul's letters, anything that Paul's ever written, anything Paul's ever said, he always talks about one thing: the resurrected Jesus Christ. So that's where the disagreement, that's where the agreement stops. Because I'm, okay, it's back to that Jesus thing. I don't know, maybe so. Okay. Guys, everything that Paul ever wrote, every single letter always starts and comes back to and centers around the risen Jesus. In one of his letters, he actually said, guys, look, if Jesus never resurrects from the dead, we're wasting our time. This is nothing. If it wasn't for that, by the way, the reason why we as believers, why this Christian faith, we don't base our faith based on a book. We base our faith on an event. And the event is the resurrection of Jesus Christ. We don't have a faith that's based in a book. We have a faith that's based in an event. That right there happening. Okay? And Paul, everything Paul ever talked about was that. That's all he did. And why? Because he physically had a real encounter with the risen Jesus. He never saw him teach, never saw a miracle, didn't see the dude walk on water, didn't do any of that. But here he is when he's trying to put down this movement. Here's the risen Jesus showing up. And he has an encounter. And that moment must have been, it was terrifying for him. Because, again, here's this, he's not just a man. He sees him as God himself. And he realizes, I have been fighting. The God that I'm trying to serve, I am actually fighting against him. I am on the wrong side here. I am on the wrong side. That moment when he met Jesus, he talks about it multiple times. He actually went blind. The light was so bright that he went physically blind. But even though he went physically blind, God opened up his real eyes to who he really was. He was physically blind. He couldn't see a thing because it forced him to open up his real eyes and to see his true nature, his true condition. He was a beast. And that beast that he thought he was fighting against, that sin beast that he thought he was fighting, it was actually him. He had it. He was a reflection of what he thought he was trying to combat. He was on the wrong side. But that moment when he met Jesus changed everything. And like we said today, it is hard to find. Right now, if you could look at the last 2,000 years and you put secular scholars and historians, name one person that has had more impact than Paul in the modern world, and I don't think you can find one. And it's not because Paul was awesome. It was because of the awesome thing that God did. The awesome thing that God did. I mean, totally transformed his life. And think about it, guys. See, just like again with the Beauty and the Beast, right? He had what changed the beast? Love. But do you notice if you watch the whole movie, he started to change, but he didn't change on the outside. Where did he begin to change? On the inside. He would still look like a beast on the outside, yet his heart was changing. Who he was different. It was changed little by little, and when he declared his love, he still looked like a beast. Yet when that love changed him, watch, from the inside out. And that's exactly what happened to Paul. This encounter with Jesus changed him from the inside out and radically transformed his life. See, let's look at one instance where he says here in 2 Corinthians, he writes this description of what Jesus did in this way. This is one of the many ways that he describes it. Here he says, therefore, if anyone is in Christ, meaning anyone who believes in Christ, anyone who identifies with him, finds himself, places and believes in him, he is a new creation. The old has passed away. Behold, a new has come. Notice the transformation from old to new. Look, anybody like those fixer-upper shows or Pimp My Ride shows or any of those? Like anybody kind of like, I don't know, those are really popular. Why are those popular? Why are those popular? Why like The Biggest Loser? Why are those popular? Because they're stories of radical transformation. They take something from not so great to something amazing, right? They take junkie homes who, value nothing and put a couple $1,000s in and immediately it's like it doubles in value. Like it looks like a brand new house. It's amazing, right? Somebody that, have a busted old, piece of junk or a car. You take it to the right person who restores it and now it's like a priceless artifact, right? It's an amazing machine now. And so that's what Paul is saying. See, this transformation from old to new is that drastic. And guys, let me tell you what it's not. There's a speaker, Ravi Zacharias. He says it this way. He says, see, Jesus didn't come into the world to make bad people good. Jesus came to make dead people alive. That is very different. Jesus came into this world not to make bad people good. And that's what a lot of us try to, a lot of us tend to think, like, I just need a couple improvements, just need a little, little enhancements and whatnot. I'm for the most part okay. But I just, I can see a little improvement here and there. But no, see, Jesus didn't just come to make us a little better. He came to make dead people alive, to take us from the old to the new. This transformation is that radical. It is that drastic. And he can do it in any which one of us. And the day, the Saul that was before Jesus was not the Paul of after. I mean, I kind of remember my road to Damascus moment when Jesus interrupted me and interrupted my life. And the light that he shone on me helped me to see really the beast that I was in the negative sense. Like just to see how hideous the sin that I thought was, okay, well, I'm not that bad. I've been going to church all my life and this and that. And Jesus interrupted me and shined a light so strong that it showed me, I was like, look, I don't have it as all together that I thought I did. And I had never, at that point, I thought I had surrendered to Jesus, but I had Jesus up in my head. I knew Jesus here, didn't know Jesus here. And there was a big difference. And the terror of that, I mean, the only way I can describe it is I wasn't like Paul, like some light shone in the living room, and I got knocked off the couch, and I couldn't see, and I'm wandering to the bathroom. It didn't happen to me. But if you ever seen like a movie, where like a black van just pulls up somewhere, just like peels out, pulls out the sliding glass door, boom, opens up. They drag somebody, throw a bag over their head, bring them inside, right? Take off, speeding out, and then they rip the bag off, and the individual finds himself tied to a chair, right, in a dark room with an interrogation light, right? You ever seen one of those kind of movies? That's exactly how I felt. That to me, when I look back at that, that's exactly the moment. When Jesus himself literally interrupted my life, it was like the bag was ripped off, and I realized that I was chained to sin. And I saw who I was, and I wanted to run so fast, and I just wanted to hide under the biggest rock and die. But I couldn't run. I couldn't escape that gaze. That gaze was too much. And so it was at that moment, that was my little, same thing with Paul, where I didn't see it with my physical eyes, but my other eyes were opened. And God began to show me something. And it was at that moment that I had to make a choice. Paul had to make a choice, and he made the right one. He surrendered and obeyed to Jesus, and he was never the same again. I'm glad I took advantage of that moment too, guys, because if I wouldn't have, it's kind of like the Beauty and the Beast, right? The rose petals are falling, and if he didn't change before time was up, that condition was his permanent condition. If I wouldn't have changed at that moment, if I wouldn't have changed, period, and the time of my life runs out, do you guys know that's what God says? It's like, look, we're all in this beastly sin form. Though we may look great on the outside, the inside says, our nature says something different. And if we don't change from the inside out, if we don't change from the inside out and allow God and his love to change us, if we die, our time is up, the last rose petal in our life falls, and we have not changed, the condition, the nature of sin becomes permanent. And that's what condemns people to hell. Because you have chosen your nature, and that nature becomes permanent. We need to change our nature before time runs out. I'm glad I had that moment. As terrifying as that moment was, it was also amazing because it was at that moment that I felt God's love for me like never before. When I am literally seeing, I am living a life and doing things that he hates, yet he still loves me. That's what makes God's love so beautiful, guys. Is that his love is so beautiful because he loves us despite the ugliness of our lives. Do you guys know that we all have, and I'm going to go as far as saying this, do you guys know we all have inner beasts that we strive to tame each and every day? Those beasts have different names, like, greed and loneliness, hate, anger, frustration, insecurities, low self-esteem, unforgiveness. I'm going to start repeating a few right now if I just keep on going, but you guys get the drift, right? I'm going to go as far as say we all have those inner beasts in us, and we try to give it a bone and try to throw whatever at it just to make it feel better and just to appease it. But it might, tame it for a moment, but we can never conquer it. And you know what the worst beast of them all? It's pride. Pride is probably the worst beast of them all because pride makes you think that you have tamed it. And when you think that you have tamed that beast, that's when it does its most damage. That's one of the nastiest ones of them all. Now, you may think, man, hold on, Pastor, I think you're going a little too far, man. I don't see myself as kind of like that. I know that might be drastic for some of you. But again, I'm pretty sure you would agree with me, though, that as great as you may think you are, wouldn't you say that there's probably areas in your life that I can improve on this, I can improve on that? I'm pretty sure you would agree with me. I think we all would. But see, that's something to me that's interesting. Each, deep down inside, every person in this room, we all sense that this need for change. Why do we feel this need for change? Why do we feel this need to improve and to get better? Where does that come from? Where in nature do we see that? We don't see that anywhere else, do we? Where this desire to improve and to enhance and to progress. Where does that come from? Because I believe, and as Christians, we believe that, see, we are born in this condition that is yearning for change. We are in a place that we are not where we ought to be, and we ought to go somewhere, and we're constantly looking for answers. Why do you think that, every time you look on the New York bestseller list, you're going to find self-help books up there? Why? Because people are dying for answers, trying to find, how can I get better, right? This is why we watch, whether it be, hey, I want to improve this or I want to improve that. We look for self-help books. We look for guides. We look for mentors, right? We spend all this money on stuff to what? To improve our life, right? To get better, to be better, right? How many times have we, binge watch motivational speakers and TED Talks and stuff like that? Why? Because we want to get better. We want to learn. We want to strive. We want to do what we can, right? Even some of you are here in church right now because some of your reason is you want things to be better and you think God is going to be it. You think God is going to be the thing that's going to improve and help your life better. That's why you're even here. But guys, all of those things are great. All of those things are good. I'm not saying that they're bad. But the thing that I want you to be careful with is this. The better you understand this following phrase that I'm about to say, the faster you understand the following phrase, the further you're going to go in your faith. Because, see, for the longest time before that interaction with Jesus, guys, all of those things I went for too. And see, those things can help satisfy you temporarily. But it doesn't remove the problem. It doesn't fulfill you permanently. All of those things are great. The books and the talks and all that stuff is awesome. But that only, without the love of God, all of those things, the best that they'll do is satisfy you temporarily. It will never fulfill you permanently. And it will never cause the kind of change that only God can do. So the faster I want you to catch this, the faster you understand the following phrase, the further you're going to go in your faith. It's this. Society and stuff can only provide you recreation. Number one. I want you to understand that. Society and stuff can only provide recreation. It's going to make your life better, but at best, it's only going to provide recreation. Science can provide a transition. Interesting for those that say they're gender fluid or have different gender identities and stuff, to me, I listen to certain phrases, and to me, I think it's interesting when they say, I'm born one way, but I feel like I need to change, almost if they wish to be born again. Isn't that interesting? It's like they naturally know there's something wrong with my condition. There's something wrong with the way I am. There's something wrong with the way I'm born. I'm not born who I ought to be. I'm not born who I should be. So I need a physician to rebirth me into this new life. Do you know how close they are to the truth? How close they are. Because yes, we are all born a way that is faulty and short of something else, and we ought to be and need to be born again. But the only physician that can do that is the ultimate physician. And so society and stuff at best can only provide recreation. Science can provide a transition. That's it. Religion can provide information. And some of that information can make you feel good, can make you feel full, can make you feel satisfied, make you feel better about yourself. But religion alone can only provide information. But Jesus alone can provide the kind of transformation that we all desperately need. And you know where that transformation starts? With the decision to surrender to Jesus Christ. That transformation alone happens, and what is required for that transformation is a decision to believe in the risen Christ, the risen Savior, and to surrender that life. Guys, look, the beauty, Paul's story and my story, many of our stories here tells us this. The beauty of God's love can change any beast and turn any sinner into a saint. That's what Paul's story is about. Everything that you'll ever read about Paul is that pretty much in a sentence. The beauty of God's love to transform and to change a beast and to turn any sinner into a saint. That's Paul's story. And guys, with that, I want to challenge you. And here's the takeaway from today. Because like I said before, we are all here. We're all looking for something. We all are. That's why we're all here to begin with. I'm going to be honest with you. Whether you know what you're looking for or not, we're all looking for something. And we are all looking for how do we get to where we are to where we want to be. And so, guys, if you want your life to change, you got to change your ways. And for you to change your ways, you got to change your thinking. You got to change the way how you process and see the world. You know what we call that? You know what Christians call that? Repenting. Okay? That word, repenting, guys, is not repeating your apologies. It's not repeating apologies saying, oops, I did it again. Okay? That's not repenting. Repenting is not repeating an apology and then repeating the offense. That's not repenting. That's you just trying to cash in on that grace, and that doesn't work like that. Okay? It doesn't work like that. Repenting is not repeating an apology and repeating the offense. Repenting, literally that phrase, that word means to change. It is to change who you are, to change your focus. Some people say to do a 160, right? A 180. Wow, I can't do math. So if your life is heading in this direction, you're going to do a 180. You're going to turn your back on this way of life. You're going to turn your back on this way of thinking. To repent means to reconsider who you are without God and to reconsider how important God is. That's repenting. If you want someone else to change, if you want your circumstances to change, you want your marriage to change, you want your finances to change, you want your family to change, you see the country, you see what's going on in the world, right? You see another terrorist attack over in London. You want to see something change, and we're like, what can we do? This is so overwhelming. I can't and by the way, you can't change other people. You can't do that. You're not supposed to. All you are responsible for is allowing God to change. Say it with me. Say me. That's it. You want God to change your circumstances? You have to allow God to first change you. If he can't change you, he can't get to you. He can't get to your circumstances. He can't get to everything else. He needs to start with you. And we saw it with Paul. Paul's life changed from the inside, and he changed the world. He changed the world. God really through him. And so, guys, the application is I'm going to challenge all of you to repent. If you're a believer in Jesus Christ, you've had your come to Jesus moment. You've had that moment where you were confronted with sin. You walked up, you raised your hand during a service, you came to the front, you did this, you did that, whatever, you said your prayer. Guys, I want you to understand that's awesome. That's awesome. That one moment conversion, that sealed your salvation right there. I want you to understand that. But do you guys know that there's more to it than that? Do you know Paul, the day that he met Jesus, it wasn't, all right, Jesus, thanks for not killing me. Okay, I know it's kind of like, trying to kill your followers and arrest them. Thanks for not killing me. Thanks for being nice. Okay, I'm just going to be on my way now. Okay? Paul didn't do that. Paul's life changed. He had a life-changing moment, but then he spent the rest of his life pursuing that same Christ. Spent the rest of his life pursuing God. Billy Graham says it this one way. A Christian is not just someone who has a conversion. It is someone who continues to follow Christ and strives to be more like Jesus each and every day. So some of you guys, maybe if you're a believer in Jesus Christ, I guarantee you there's an area that you would love for God to change. Maybe there's a certain character flaw that you haven't surrendered to God yet, and you need him to do that. Maybe it's a certain need that you have that you need God to act in this relationship. You need God to act in your moment. Maybe for some of you, maybe your relationship with God has gone cold. Maybe, you got saved, but it's not the same. It's not what it used to be. And you recognize what's wrong. You recognize that, okay, it's not God's problem. It's mainly mine. But then there's something about us. There's something about me. I know how that feels. It happens to me too. I'll catch myself, drifting, fading away. And then there's that motivation of what are you going to do? Are we going to sit and whine and complain? It's like if my wife looks at me and there's dirty laundry in the basket, I'm like, oh, there's dirty laundry. It's dirty. Okay? It's going to stay dirty if I leave it there, right? So what do I need to do? Take it, put it in the machine, pour whatever I need to pour, turn it on. And what happens after that? The machine does, I hope not, right? But the machine does the rest, right? If I put the clothes inside the machine, if I pour what I need to pour inside of the machine, and if I turn it on, that's it. What does the machine do? It does the rest. All of that work was maybe 20 seconds of effort, and then the machine's running for like an hour? Okay? And then the dryer. Pop, pop. That's it. It's nothing. Do you guys know that works the same way? If we look at our circumstances with God and we look at our circumstances with this and that, oh, God, my marriage. Oh, God, my life. Oh, God, my this. My relationship with you, my this. Oh, man, it's not what I wanted to be. We just look at it like if it's just going to magically just, get better. Okay? We look at ourselves. We look at our hurt, insecurities. You know what you need to do? You take it. You place it. You surrender it to Jesus. You pour your prayers into God, and you turn on your faith, and guess what God does? He does the rest. That's it. When you put and you do those few steps, and you surrender those things to God, and you believe, you turn on that faith, God does the rest. But it's not, he ain't going to do it. No, the clothes ain't magically going to pop into the machine. If not, I'd be a billionaire if I would figure that out by now, okay? It's not going to happen. Your problems are not going to fix themselves by just staring at them, okay? Your issues and other stuff, it's not going to get any better just by looking and complaining. But if you surrender them to Jesus and turn on that faith, the love of God then takes over. Guys, repenting is something that at first it just seems so easy, right? Is it just asking, I'm sorry? No, it's more than that. It's releasing all of those things and giving it to God. Because repenting, guys, is the first thing that you need to do. And when you turn back to God in that way, you then allow God to do what only he can do. And that's change and manipulate and make a difference in your circumstances. Despite what you become, in spite what you've done. And if you are not a believer in Jesus Christ, if you don't know what that's like, if this whole time maybe you've been distracted listening to me because there keeps on this either voices or this thing keeps on rearing its ugly head and trying to distract, that's probably Jesus trying to get your attention. He's probably trying to shine a light in an area of your life that you don't want to be seen. You don't want to recognize. You don't even want to admit that you have. But guys, I want to tell you that it's okay. Because you know what? You can do the best that you can to hide your faults and hide your mistakes. But God sees it anyways. And here's the amazing part. He loves you anyways. He sees it all and still loves you despite it all. And so, guys, the choice that we all have to make today is this. See, Jesus, he does this every day, and he's doing it right now. If we want the beauty of God's love to be able to change whatever is inside of us, okay, we need to surrender. We got to recognize that it's not just a one-time event, but God calls us to more. See, Jesus interrupted Paul. He stood in his path, stood in his way. You know what Jesus did? He pointed him. He didn't tell him to go to Damascus. He jumped in the road, interrupted him, and says, I want you to go to take this road, this different road, go to this other city. And when you do that, then I will show you the rest. And Paul obeyed. And Paul was still blind. For 3 days, he was blind still. And do you guys know another thing he didn't do? He didn't eat a thing. He didn't eat anything for 3 days. You know why? He was so desperate for this God. He was so desperate for God to heal him, for fix him, save him. He was so desperate, he didn't eat a thing. Are you that desperate? Are you that desperate for God to be able to do whatever it takes in your life, that you're willing to count, like what Paul would describe in his letters, I count everything as loss in order just to gain Jesus. That's what he did. That's how he lived. And Jesus is standing in front of us like he stood in front of Paul, pointing you in the right road. But do you know what he's also doing? He's waiting for you to walk in it. And if you walk in it, and if you do those things, God promises not to disappoint. He promises to be able to act on behalf of your circumstances, despite your circumstances, and take you from where you are to where you are called and destined to be. Guys, I want to pray for you.